everyone knows how important culture is and how important attracting and then holding on to talent is. But how are some firms here in New Jersey actually doing that? This is the NJCPA Issues Watch podcast. Welcome back to the NJCPA Issues Watch podcast. I'm your host for everything tech related, Sean Stein Smith, and I'm always happy to be interacting with, working with, and learning from other members of the NJCPA community. And I'm also incredibly honored to be serving on the board of trustees through the year 2025. And I'm really amped for our episode here today because normally I focus on everything tech related. But on the other hand, right, firms are built and grow and do well based on the people and the culture. So I'm really amped to have here on the podcast today two guests. And I think it's the first time I've ever hosted two guests. So going to see how it all goes. But I'm really happy to have here today Lauren Dunn, who is the Chief People Officer at WIS. And just anecdotally, I have to be honest with you here, Lauren, I have never actually met somebody who's a Chief People Officer. So I'm going to ask you to unpack what that title actually is in a moment. But Lauren is an expert in organizational psychology, which also sounds really, really interesting. So Lauren, it's a pleasure to have you here on the podcast. And uh, anything else you want to add for our audience here, as by way of introduction?
Yes, thank you so much, Sean. Great to be here today. So as a Chief People Officer, ultimately, we own, myself and my team, all things human resource related. But I think over time, human resources sort of got this stigma that we were sitting in a room looking to hand out, red flags when there were HR violations. Certainly over time, and really it came out of a book by Laszlo Bock from Google, who really coined the phrase people operations, and more about how people work and how they're motivated and why they behave and do the things they do, and what sort of services we as people operators can provide to make work life better for all people. And that kind of leads into that org psych piece also. A little bit about me. I am SHRM certified and I'm a mom of two. So certainly when we're talking today about culture and work-life balance, there's a big piece of that because I have a 4-year-old and a 2.5-year-old who take up just as much time as WIS does. And so finding that balance is always very important for me. And yeah, definitely all about live well, be well, work well, for sure. So.
Awesome, Lauren. Awesome to have you on the podcast. I'm sure you're going to really have some great insights for us here. And now for our other guest here today, a man who needs no introduction to anybody in the NJCPA, Mr. Joseph Hunt, who is a Sherman's manager at CLA and has won pretty much every honor and award issued by the NJCPA. And in 2023 was named to the Accounting Power 50 by NJBiz. Joe, it's an absolute pleasure to have you here today, my friend.
Sean, I was so excited when you asked me because you've been a role model for me at everything NJCPA. So getting to do this with you is really awesome. And the things we're going to discuss are some of the things I'm most passionate about. And I think that's the thing that I love most about CLA is, all right, you can get to do exactly what you're passionate about and where do you want to bring those things. And that's really what I'm sharing with people when we're talking about the CPA pipeline and keeping people in the profession is let's figure out what people love to do and why they love to do it and start there and then say, well, here's how you can do this for a living and here's how you can make a career out of it. So really excited about that. I've been at CLA for 5 years and I work in the insurance practice. I focus mainly on our nonprofit clients. So I really love helping them help more people. That's what I love to do. And I think we can just find a way to let people continue to do what it is they love to do outside of the walls of wherever they work, whether it's CLA, WIS, whether it's an industry, whatever that is, whatever they're passionate about, if we can let them bring that to work every day, that's the goal. And excited to talk about it a little bit more.
All right. Awesome stuff. And so to hop sort of right into our conversation, and I'll probably start with Lauren on this first question. In your role as the chief people officer, right? You obviously have a sort of bird's eye view over people management. And so, based on your experience, what are some of the things that recent graduates are most interested in as they enter the accounting workforce?
No, and it's a great question because I think it really encompasses so many things. I mean, to put it in one sentence, I would say the promise of a balanced career path, right? Can I have a life, right? Be a mom or a husband, have children, right? Whatever it is that I want to do outside of work with the ability to make a great living in a place that sets out a path for me of, what I can achieve over a period of time. And that requires a lot, right? From our side, certainly on the people side, is there a mentor? Who do they go to that's going to take ownership of them, coach, sponsor, and mentor them through whatever that path looks like? To kind of echo what Joe was saying, what are your likes and dislikes? If it's working for nonprofit and that's your purpose, then let's get you on a path to doing that. But it comes with a lot of other things too, right? We're going to talk a little bit about the pipeline. I don't want to go too far ahead, but are we paying adequate wages for people to live and work in the state of New Jersey and tri-state area? What does the in-person, flexibility look like? Am I able to create those connections both in person and office? And also, if I'm a remote employee, do I feel connected to the organization as a whole? Are our goals aligned with the organization? So what Joe wants out of a career, is that aligned with CLA? Is it aligned with what WIS is saying, right? And so we're all marching to the same beat, which leads to that culture piece. So I think certainly, and by the way, all of that in like a transparent lens so that we're open and honest with each other. I always use the metaphor of a relationship where one person wants the ring, but the other person's not really sure that they want to get married. And like at some point you got to get together and say, am I getting the ring or not? Right. And so sort of the same thing in an employee-employer relationship. Am I ready to move forward, and are we all on the same page and aligned in our values and what we want? So
Well said there, Lauren. And I'll just add quickly that being transparent about things is an easy thing, but it's often something that can get overlooked in the everyday hustle. And Joe, what do you think recent graduates want? Being more sort of boots on the ground in the
Yeah.
firm itself.
Yeah, I think I'll even shorten it down to one word, and that's impact. That's impact. Where can I make the biggest difference in the individual lives of the clients that I'm working with, in the organizations that I'm working with, in the lives of the people that that organization is serving? How is the work that I'm doing equating to a difference in my community? Uh, that is what people are looking for 100%. I was having a conversation with somebody yesterday that was even taking it a step further and saying, well, how about the specific clients I'm working with? Are they aligned with the values that I'm the things that are most important to me, and are they doing things that I'm passionate about? Because it's almost a little more, it's even more exciting and inspiring to me when I'm working with, maybe that's an organization or a person that um, our values are aligned, and they're doing things that I'm excited about, maybe that I would like to be doing outside of work. So you're bringing that life into work, and that's something that's really exciting. So a short anecdote, my brother went to St. Joseph's University and studied leadership ethics and organizational sustainability, and that was housed under the business school. And I've always just kind of seen my brother like, all right, I want to make an impact. And he graduated in 2020, so I feel for him there. And then he, 2020 graduating, that sort of thing, just the job situation didn't really work out, was going to go do a year of service somewhere and continue fostering like what it is he wanted to do. And then he ended up going to work on a farm out in Oregon for a year and a half. And I think that was his way of saying, okay, well, I got to learn, what it is, I want to do. And then in the sustainability area, how can I go make that impact? So learning what he wants to do, then go make that impact. I think if we communicated, if I did, hey, there's this opportunity called ESG, and here's how organizations are making an impact in their environment, socially, in the governance, that sort of area. And I said, this is an opportunity for you to get involved in maybe he still would have did that. But this is an opportunity for you to get involved in a professional services firm like CLA, like WIS, and here's how you can make an impact. I think that'd be something that's really attractive. So I was having a conversation with somebody yesterday, and we are like, we always pitch it as here's tax, here's audit, here's advisory, but here's this huge area of all these different positions that you can make an impact in, and us communicating it that way shows people very clearly right out of the gate. Here's how you can make an impact, and when you communicate that very clearly, it's like, well, I'll do anything to do that. Um, so
You know,
impact is really what they're looking for. Yeah.
it's interesting, Joe, too, what you just said. I love thinking about that from the client angle, right? Because to your point, we're always selling like, what are you going to do when you're here at the accounting firm? But
Yep.
maybe it should be, who are you going to help, right? Like, we have so many services that we can wrap around clients, everything from our wealth management, practice to tax and trust and estate planning. I mean, so really a lot of times these clients and their businesses, all of a sudden then they become personal clients too. And it's really about how we're affecting their families and their livelihoods and how they do well. And to your point, maybe even make impact with some of the money that we're helping to manage. And so I think that's a nice way to think about it, is what, who are those clients? Are our values aligned with them? And how are we helping them? And what good can we do, in the world in that way too? So I love that.
Yeah, we just end up making the world, the community a better place if we just focus on how we can help somebody from
That's right.
from the onset. How can we help somebody? And that's what a lot of people are coming out of school saying, like, let's help people. And there's so many ways to do that in a professional services firm. We just got to communicate it to them. Totally
Yep.
agree with you, Lauren.
And also remembering that most people, and we just had a leadership conference over the last couple of weeks, and part of the conference was about writing your purpose. And I found it so impactful to listen to our staff, seniors, managers, up through partner, saying most of their purposes were all about helping other people. None of them were focusing on themselves, right? And so we have
Yep.
those people here now. So it's about just making sure that other people know that's what we're here for. So it's good. It all wraps together, right? And to your point, we have a much more thoughtful generation coming out of school now that I think they're really interested in that, and it helps drive them. And so we have to do a good job to communicate, how we do that.
They are very thoughtful, and a lot of these things are non-negotiables for them, as you probably know, being such an integral part of all things people. These are non-negotiables, and we got to talk about them up front, and the path needs to be very transparent.
Yep.
Excellent points there, really. And I have to be totally honest with you both. I talk to a lot of people at firms, groups all across the US, and I have I have not really heard that angle being talked about too much yet. And I do think incorporating that with other changes and tweaks and all the rest could go a long way to making accounting look more appealing to folks graduating college now and going forward. It's a very interesting take, and it honestly is one that I haven't heard talked about too much yet out there, but hopefully I will now going forward. And so, adding on to that, right, more sort of operational here. And Lauren, I'll go back to you first. How are firms handling this newest cohort graduating college, right? This Gen Z or Alpha or other names, right? How are firms basically getting those people in the door and then holding on to them to help build the firm going forward?
Well, I know here at WIS, we have invested heavily now in really, I call them our boots on the ground associates, not only just on the career fair front, but really trying to create those relationships. We want to get to a point where the universities are meeting the person, right, the human being, and saying, this is someone who maybe is looking for more of a niche accounting firm. They want to stay, local to New Jersey, smaller firm in terms of size of people. We're just over, 300 people currently. So I want them coming to us, right? Professor X comes to us and say, hey, here's this person, you've got to meet them. I think they're a great fit for WIS, versus us just going out with our swag and our tables in the career fair and, doing our thing, which is part of recruiting, right? We know we need to do that. There's a marketing angle there that we know we have to complete. But certainly creating those relationships. And by the way, also giving services. Our head of recruiting, Mark Peterson, he does resume reviews. If people are interested in them, we speak to classes. So really anywhere we can get involved and again, be of service to the universities and the students, we're hoping that brings them back to us, right? Because we've now created that relationship. So I think that's from, getting them in the door. Once they're here, I talk a lot about what my painting is back here, but promoting that holistic wellness piece, right? We're not the angry accountant under the umbrella. We're the child singing in the colored rain. And so promoting physical health, mental health, spiritual well-being, whatever that is for you, diversity and inclusion and belonging within the four walls of, WIS and also our other offices. And certainly a lot of the things we spoke about earlier, but your occupational wellness, right? Like, do you have a career path? Do you know where you're going? Who's paying attention to you, right? We're sort of putting in place now really a larger performance management structure. And so it won't just be on the mentor and the manager, but really on my team too, to be influencing and assisting in where you want to go here, or is it elsewhere? Is a CLA a better, place for you? Because we want ultimately what's best, for the human being and whatever they're looking for. And then, financially as well, just consistently reviewing how people are working so that we know that they're living just as well as they're working, right? Because if you're not living well, you're probably not working well, and maybe vice versa sometimes. It all bleeds together. And post-COVID, working at home with your kids on the ground or your spouse who's in the basement, right? My husband works in the basement, so I got to come here. And so you have to be aware that all of that really, the line is so blurred. And so it's our responsibility, I feel, as an employer to take care of the person in all those forms so that I get this person and not the angry accountant. So hopefully doing all that, they want to stay with us, because then we have happy people and happy culture, and this is where they want to be. So
Well said. And Joe, I know that back in October, um, you were telling me about how CLA has different titles as opposed to being supervisor or otherwise. It was a more flat structure. So how does that work? And how is your firm in other ways trying to get and hold on to some of this new talent coming up?
Yeah, I appreciate that question. And that was probably one of the things I was most excited about joining CLA, was this opportunity to really say, okay, well, I want to be internally focused or externally focused, and really align myself with the things that are my strengths and that sort of thing. So we have a structure where I would think in a typical the public accounting like landscape, you would have some levels of staff or associate, and then you move to senior, and then move to supervisor, manager. Director is typically a position where, and I've actually shared this with my friends, the director position is typically one that comes maybe a few years after you're a manager, and then maybe move to a senior manager position, and then maybe partner or principal, whatever that looks like. But CLA has a structure where you move from associate to senior, and then after that senior position, you really make a decision: do I want to move towards a director path or a manager path? And the director path is really focused on internal growth and how am I helping and expanding what we're doing internally, and the manager path is focused externally. And that's the path that I chose because I enjoy doing stuff like this. I enjoy seeing you at the NJCPA convention, and those types of things. And then you move on to either principal or signing director. So that's that next step, and you're still just focused internally or externally. And that's probably the simplest way to put it. And why I was most excited about that, and I think what firms can continue to do to retain and promote the talent is asking people where they draw energy from, and where do they draw energy from, and how do they cultivate energy in others. And that was a conversation I had with somebody last year after I went to a training in Dallas, Texas, and I had this conversation with the instructor of that training, and she's just become such a great friend and coach and teacher of mine. She just kind of led me to saying, ask yourself, like, when you're looking at what you're doing, like, where do you draw energy and how do you cultivate it in others? And that was at a point where I wasn't really sure how I was doing that. And then we joined CLA, and those questions were kind of answered for me, because CLA was, I almost feel like CLA is asking me inadvertently, where do you draw energy, and let's also put you in the put you in the positions to cultivate that from others. And that's just it, like, that's what we need to let people do. And there's an example that I was kind of running through like a year ago, and I was actually using I'm a big Jets fan. I think you know that. And I was using our division
Real
opponent who we're
shame
playing
there,
this.
Joe. Real shame
I
there, by the
know,
way. So
I know. I was using our division opponent, the Buffalo Bills, as an example, and their quarterback Josh Allen. As Josh Allen is a dual threat quarterback, he can throw, and he can run. And if they just told Josh Allen, just sit in the pocket and only pass, don't use your legs, Josh Allen wouldn't feel like 100% of himself. And that's probably part of his, um, probably part of his game is, it is part of his game. He throws and he runs, but that's also probably why he gets hurt a little bit too much, or they're a little bit worried about it. But if you held him back from doing that all the time, would he be 100% of himself all the time? And that's kind of what I'm sharing with people is, let people. I needed to feel like, all right, I can throw the ball, and then I can run when I need to, and use my legs. And I feel like CLA really just lets me use my legs, and the people that I'm working with, like, that's just not an organizational message. The people that I'm working with day in and day out, encourage me and inspire me to use my legs, and that kind of thing. And that's what's most impactful for me when I think about, okay, this is why I want to stay at CLA. And I think if we, do that for people that are currently here, how is it that you want to use your legs? It's kind of
mhm.
a question that I ask people, and there's different ways of framing that for people. So we need to figure out how we can um, build that relationship with people and start to know people, and continue to know people and understand them, and figure out what, where they want to do that, and um, that sort of thing. Yeah.
Well said. Well said. And the Giants are also doing terribly this year. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
awful,
I,
Yeah,
awful
we're
season
not
so
having
far.
a good time here in the
Just
tri-state area.
just not having a good time at all.
I couldn't bring up how Aaron Rodgers also runs and throws. He does run really well when the Achilles wasn't
He did
busted.
run really well.
He did
He
run
did.
really well
He did.
last year.
Last
Last
year.
year.
And so, okay. So any conversation around culture and talent acquisition and development, I have to ask you both. And Lauren, I'll come back to you first. What conversations, what plans, what uh, alarm bells are going off around the CPA pipeline? It's because it's obviously a huge issue. I'm sure all of us have heard way too much about it recently, but it's a really critical issue, and I'd be interested to see sort of what WIS and CLA are talking about, planning about how to uh, address this issue going forward.
Yeah, definitely. So I think first and foremost on the recruiting side of things, we are getting involved at a lower level of education. So certainly in that freshman, sophomore time frame to try to get them in, whether it's through an externship or a shadowing program, just exposing people to the profession and sort of helping to battle the stigma, dare I say, of like what it means to be an accountant in an accounting firm, even through a lot of our social impact strategy, which working with a few organizations teaching financial literacy. Again, in some urban environments, a lot of young people don't know what it really means, and maybe they weren't exposed to it. Maybe their parents weren't accountants, or they don't have accountants in their family, and so showing them that there can be a path, and to kind of highlight what Joe was saying before too, using your legs, right? That doesn't mean you have to be a leader. Maybe you are happy being more of an administrative type role, or just kind of staying even keel, doing the thing with the clients that you like. For some people, that consistency is what they're aiming for. You know, even for me, I can't say I've ever really been driven by a title. I'm just driven to do great work. I love to make people happy, help people, and do great work. And if something else comes from that, wonderful. But that's not really, you know, my driving force. And so understanding that, I think, is really important. You know, certainly here, again, to continue battling the stigma, we are trying to work towards a more consistent 40-hour work week. Like, that's definitely our goal at WIS. You know, we're not big on uh, managing hours, and there's no hours police that walk around and make sure that people are executing, and certainly sometimes that leads to some issues, but you know, that's not the type of firm we are, and that's not the type of firm we want to be. But we have to explain that. We have to get out and have that communication with people so they understand that they can, again, have a life while doing something that they enjoy. And so that's super important. And then you've got the tech piece, right? So offshoring and outsourcing that work that maybe you don't have capacity for, and you don't want to, you know, dump it on people that don't have the availability to do so. And then using technology, right? Like, we have so much ability now with AI and, you know, everything else that's coming out to be creative on, you know, automating those processes that frankly humans aren't great at anyway. So let's use the tools that can take those things off our plates so we can focus on the things that are really important, mentoring people and guiding people. And I think hopefully if we keep doing that, right, and it takes a little while to move a ship, right? So it's going to take a while to get there. But I think if we keep having those conversations and conversations like this, it will help. So curious to see what you're doing, Joe.
Yeah.
CLA.
Yeah, I really love what CLA is doing in this area, and this is I have the real privilege of serving on the NJCPA's pipeline task force as well, and that's just such a great group of people around the state that are doing such good things, and I'm really proud to be a part of CLA because of the leadership that we're showing in the industry, just like WIS is. From a high school standpoint, our high school internship program that was launched this past year, to getting out there and talking with people at all levels of education, and really enjoyed the NJCPA's high school program. Um, from a CPA pipeline standpoint, though, I like to approach it. I was talking kind of sports a minute ago, but I also like to approach it that way too. Like, this is not a just go to a career fair and you know, you find that's almost like finding a needle in the haystack when you go to a career fair and you just find somebody and yep, maybe they're an intern and then they start working for your firm. It's all about relationship building, and that's what we're trying to do through some of the networking events and stuff that we do at the NJCPA is build relationships with people when they're in high school, when they're freshmen, when they're sophomore, and maybe I think that's the way to approach it is how do we build relationships with people and um, really show them that, because I think that messaging that you're talking about there, Lauren, that's a story that can be told over 1 or 2 years and all the different programs that we can offer people and bringing them in through different internships and opportunities at the firm, and then maybe that's like through those internships and that sort of thing, they see, okay, well, this is what inspires me. This is a career that I can really get behind. But I really would say the biggest thing is the high school internship program that started last year, and then is just going to continue to grow. And just a ton of credit to the team at CLA and specifically in New Jersey for everything that they do. And um, it's such a multifaceted conversation about the pipeline. You can start with talking about what everybody all their different roles are across, whether that's the um, the licensure process, and is that the biggest hurdle, or is it the culture at firms, which WIS and CLA have great cultures, and but some of the things you mentioned there, Lauren, are those typical CPA firm stereotypes, and how do we overcome some of those and show people that things are changing and things are different, and there's a new wave of people that are trying to steer things towards more of a balanced lifestyle. Like, I love at CLA that everything we do is around balance, and a bike is in every single thing that we do, because it does take balance to bring your best self to work and in your life. So um, those are some of the conversations that we're having and figuring out how to give people more balance. I think you were touching on it a bit earlier, and that's the kind of leadership that it takes to bring people um, into this profession. So
Yeah, it's funny that you say that. When I started at WIS, I mean, interesting. I was 6 months pregnant when I started during COVID, so it was an interesting time to say the least to like be in office.
totally,
But I love to work out, and so managing my kids and the drop off, I'd try to work out in the day, and by the time I get in, it was like 10.
uh-huh.
And there wasn't a lot of people here super early, but I'm sure there's someone like, oh, this lady just started and she comes in at 10. And sure enough, like a week or two into it, I would see like our head managing partner walking through at noon with like a gym bag, and he goes out and does his workout and comes back later. And I was like, yes, thank you, because right, if the leaders are doing it, like it just shows everybody else that it's okay, right? It's okay to come here and put your head down and work and take a break and exercise. I had my managers yesterday playing chess in the afternoon
That's
because
awesome.
one wanted to learn, right? So they took a chess break. Like,
Yeah,
yes, like that is the type of thing that you can do here, and connect with people. And so super important. I love the bike analogy. I love that, the
yeah.
balance and
I
bike.
like to
That's
ask.
great.
I love the bike. We had a bike in we have a bike in the office, and sometimes you see people physically riding the bike through the office. There's a question that I like to ask people when especially if I haven't worked with them before, or if it's the beginning of an engagement, is share with me anything personal that you've got going on, because I want to make sure that you're not, sacrificing something personal and something that brings you happiness outside of work just to get this project done by a specific time. And if it doesn't need to be done by a specific time, like let's figure out what works best for you. There's all things like flexible work arrangements that are maybe done on a higher level, and okay, this person's going to work these half days or this day Friday, off this every other Friday or something like that. But then I try to communicate to people about the pipeline is like we need to also they need to get a little more granular than that on a engagement by engagement or week by week basis. Let's talk to people about what's really going on in their life. And an example I like to use is I don't want to ask, maybe for a little of extra time on this Wednesday if you had a date that night with your boyfriend or girlfriend. Like just let me know, and I don't want to come between that. And then we'll figure out another option. So just trying to get an understanding of the people's priorities in their life is step one, and just knowing them and figuring out how we can help them is that's I think a key to this pipeline, and restocking it. That's the one of the things I got on that Instagram page, Sean, is restocking the CPA pipeline, and
Yeah.
how can we do that?
Nice, nice, love it, love it, love it.
Yeah.
So it kind of strikes me, and correct me because I oftentimes am off base. It almost strikes me like a big part of this whole culture and acquisition and the whole beyond the people at the firms is to actually treat them like people
Hmm.
as opposed
Novel
to just
concept, isn't
cogs.
it?
It's blowing my mind here, Lauren. I have to tell you, treat them like people as opposed to cogs in a machine.
That's right.
Interesting concept.
Absolutely.
It really,
Yep.
really
Yeah.
is. But to uh, kind of bring it back to that cog, right? How can technology, right? Because I'm a big tech guy. Joe, he knows I am. So how can all of these tools, be it RPA, automation, bots, uh, how can that help firms with all of these things, which are people focused, but are there tools out there or are there mindsets around how we use automation that are able to help firms sort of operationalize some of these goals?
Yeah, I mean, I think the key here is embracing it, right? Like don't be afraid that the bot is going to take your job, because the bot's not a human, right? And there will always be a place for humans in work. I'm here to tell you, because we're having conversations like this and what you just said about treating people like humans and not a cog on a wheel, right? So, but that's really hard for a lot of people. Like a lot of people don't like change, and we have so many generations now in the workforce that every one of those generations is going to embrace that technology differently, and that's where teams like mine come in, where it's more about understanding the why, showing them what it can do to assist them in their day-to-day and make their work life better. Because in the beginning, there's going to be fear there as to why AI is doing the thing that I've always spent 35 minutes on, right? And we know, not to speak too much to stereotypes, but a lot of accountants are very habitual and they know how long it takes to do the tasks. And this is the way I've done it for so long, right? And so introduce something within that wheel, the cog, right? And now you've got sort of a jam. And so you really need people like my team, and we've actually just heavily invested in our transformation team here as well, both in business transformation process and technology, that are really here to sort of understand the people and how they work first before we start implementing, tools and changing things. And it's tough. It is a tough hurdle to climb, but I think with the right people, we can get there. We've seen it with things coming out of COVID going remote and hybrid, right? Think of all the technology that was embraced in that really short period of time. Now with people coming back to office and some still being remote, recognition platforms and reward platforms have to be a piece of technology. You need that. From performance management, we were speaking about that before too, being able to lay out what a career path looks like, having a window between the mentor, the manager, and the employee and where they need to get to, and creating development plans and understanding themselves. I mean, it's really hard for people to do that without a tool to guide them, right? And so we have all these tools that can help us. We just need to understand, how to utilize them. And again, too, just try to move that work, to use Joe's point about using your legs. Like if I'm a quarterback that doesn't have legs to use, then why am I going to put myself in a position to do that? So, let's figure out the new game plan, right? And technology has to be a part of that. So it's a very exciting time. I feel like every new call I'm on, there's a new tool, a new way to use AI. I'm still, and by the way, I'm still trying to figure it out too, so it takes time, but I think embrace it is definitely the key.
On the sports, if we can just stick with that analogy, I would compare technology and using that at a professional services firm as almost like installing a new system of offense. You're not just adding a new tool, you're not just adding a new player, something like that, but you're installing a new, totally new system that's going to be supplementing kind of everything you've already done. And really we're kind of in that install phase right now, and how do we continue to use it? And I think, Sean, you were mentioning like, okay, we're treating people truly as like, where do you feel like you bring your best self, and all the things we've been talking about. And I think what technology is doing is allowing us to be more of that, and the things that were cogs in a professional services firm, we're going to let technology do those things, because technology is going to do them at a more efficient rate, and that sort of thing. And then we're letting people do the things that they really care about. And I think the opportunity for people here is level up your people skills. Even that, everybody, like there's a way that they've interacted with clients before. There's a thing they've brought to the table with clients before. There's a way they've communicated in the past with clients. But how do we make those even better? And how do we do even more, like thinking outside the box in terms of the client experience? Because now we have more time to do that, while technology helps us with some of the things that have been monotonous and those cogs in the wheel, if you will. I've been really excited to be involved with some of the ways we're using AI in our assurance practice, and how we're doing that. And there are things that most firms are probably doing, and the investment that CLA is making in technology over the next several years is really, really exciting. And I think it kind of it puts a nice bow on this conversation. Is technology is allowing us to do all the things we've been talking about at a higher level, and in a more robust way, and you get to really to do the things that you care about, rather than ticking and tying and making sure this schedule foots. Is let's like use technology to give us some insights, and then we'll use those to go help people in a more robust way and make a bigger impact.
Well said. And honestly, the headset that I always try to view any technology through is, how is implementing this tool going to make our lives easier? Because ultimately, our job is to be that trusted business advisor.
Totally.
And now we finally have the tools to allow us to actually do that. And, Joe, Lauren, it was an absolute pleasure having you on the podcast. This, honestly, it's a great conversation. And I encourage everybody at every firm in New Jersey and beyond to really watch it, share it, talk about it. Because having these tangible insights from two firms in New Jersey doing this stuff as we speak, and not just at the Big Four level, mind you, at real firms, regional firms, mid-sized firms, firms where people can be people. I think it's a great thing to talk about, both in terms of the pipeline and in terms of folks currently in the practice right now. So it was an absolute pleasure having you both on. We'll definitely have you on again because this whole conversation is only going to become more important going forward.
Can't wait. Thanks, Sean.
Thank you, Sean.
Absolutely. And just two quick housekeeping items prior to going. If anybody watching this podcast is not yet a member of the NJCPA Emerging Technologies Interest Group, I encourage you all to sign up at njcpa.org/groups. And our episodes of the NJCPA Issues Watch podcast, all of them, mine and everybody else's, are available at njcpa.org/podcast. Thanks. Have an awesome day.